What is the point? Like, if countries can move back on agreements like free trade agreements that have been agreed for a long time and signed, and the president can just come and say, well, this is happening. What's happening within the American government itself?
Yeah, I think it's exactly what we've been talking about, like throughout this episode, right? This is a lot feeling like it's not a democracy.
There's something that I cannot tell you yet if it's good or bad, but I think it's interesting to discuss. And it's the tariff wars that have started. So the first thing is how it's happening. Donald will wake up in the morning without any economic analysis or whatever, just by assessing the position of the United States at the moment, would, brandish out tariffs. The first one that caught my eye was the Colombia one. And I think it happened because the Colombian president, I think they sent back some criminals, and the president decided that there is a process to do that. You can't just put them on the flight and expect us to have the capacity to receive them. Of course, they are Colombians. They will be received. It's just there is a process, there's a diplomatic process to follow. Trump said, I don't care. And if you don't take your criminals, wham, tariff on every import from Colombia. And if you don't do anything again by next week, for every week, I make it worse. That happened. Fast forward to recently. And when the Colombian one happened, I'm like, okay, you know what? Maybe Colombia and the US are not the best of friends anyways before. But now we got the new one. There's a powerful free trade agreement between North American countries. It's called NAFTA, North American Free Trade Agreement. And it allows North American countries to import and export with zero tariffs. What President Donald Trump has done now is saying starting Tuesday, Canada and Mexico will start to pay 25% tariff to import things into the US. Considering how much move across these countries and companies that are supplying to the American market but are setting up in Canada or in Mexico for whatever reason, now, starting Tuesday, there will be a tariff. And instantly, Canadian government and the Mexican government are retaliating. And Trump already said, if you retaliate, I'll make it worse. Right? He already said this from the beginning. And the claim is, he said, well, Canada and Mexico, they promised that they will help to reduce the influx of drugs to the US. As if they can, as if it's up to them. As if, like if you calculate how much drugs is going from Canada to the US and US to Canada, as if it makes sense that way. That it doesn't feel like the effort that they're doing to prevent that is enough. And this is why this tariff is coming up. But to think about the entire relationship of the NAFTA region, for that to happen so easily, it begs the question of what is the point? Like, if countries can move back on agreements like free trade agreements that have been agreed for a long time and signed, and the president can just come and say, well, this is happening. What's happening within the American government itself?
Yeah, I think it's exactly what we've been talking about, like throughout this episode, right? This is a lot feeling like it's not a democracy. It's a lot feeling like it's a dictatorship, and it's kind of a problem. Like internally, I feel like what Trump has been able to achieve, I'm not sure if that's part of his plan, is to really strengthen the division within the US. It's a lot strong now. You have to sort of be on the side, and it's like you have to be for against. And this whole tariff wars, this executive order, another one and another one, it's just really making it difficult for Americans to know what to expect. There is a lot of uncertainty, like on food, on security, on a lot of things. And I don't know if this would eventually work, but it seems like a civil war, right?
That's interesting because I think that's the big question of this might work out that he gets everything he wants, because the good thing about Trump, remember when we talked about game theory or, economic theory in general, think in incentives. Trump, realizing his position as the president of the United States, has done his own estimate of the American power, the power of the US. And he has thought, well, there's no point in using carrots to do anything. The only lever I have is a threat that you won't get anything from the market that we have. But if you isolate the American economy, is it still that attractive? What makes it that attractive? Is it the participation in global markets? Or maybe it's just standalone that attractive. Is any country standalone that attractive? So it's still very unclear how this will play out. Like, who needs who more?
Exactly. I feel like you said, that's the only thing that I feel like it should be clear. They must have done that to know what this truly means, And I think they must know what it means to dish out all these tariffs and all. And you can argue that, yeah, like the US would definitely, maybe most, yeah, definitely be the one to win this war.
Why do you think so?
Because I would argue that the US economy is probably the biggest consuming economy in the world, and you don't want to miss out of that. Even China might be big in producing and manufacturing, but I would argue that the US is maybe consuming the biggest portion of that compared to like the Chinese people themselves, if that makes sense. So you want to be on the good side of the US. Maybe they win this. My worry is what you then make people start thinking. Like you said, what does it then mean if they pull out on deals like this or agreement of such magnitude? I think it's the awareness for countries to now start thinking, you know what, we can't rely on these guys anymore. We need to start thinking different. And in the long run, it will not then be a win for them, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I see what you're saying, that in the short run, they might win because they have this huge market. It's the idea of consumption.